I can still hear the crackle. That sharp, violent burst of electricity, like 100 hornets hissing at once, cut through the quiet evening air. It was supposed to be a peaceful Saturday. We just returned from the farmer's market, bags heavy with fresh bread, peaches, and honey my wife insisted on buying from the old beekeeper. But peace has a way of disappearing fast in our neighborhood. The smell of grilled steaks drifted from a neighbor's backyard. Kids laughed as they chased each other in the fatting light. My wife, Emily, smiled, holding my hand, her police captain's badge tucked safely away where no one could see. To everyone else, she was just my wife, the woman with the confident walk, the one who never bowed her head, the one people whispered about because she didn't tolerate nonsense. And then came Karen. Every neighborhood has one, but ours had the Karen. Platinum-dyed hair pulled so tight it made her eyes look permanently surprised. Sunglasses she wore even when the sun was gone. A voice that carried like an unpaid bill collector. She was the self-appointed sheriff of the HOA, always with a clipboard, always watching, always waiting for someone to break the rules. That night, she broke more than rules. "Your wife doesn't belong here?" she screeched, storming across the lawn. Her flip-flops slapped against the pavement, her pearls clinking like she was some queen patrolling her kingdom. Emily squeezed my hand tighter, the way she does when she wants me calm. "What are you talking about now, Karen?" I asked, trying to keep my tone even. "This neighborhood has standards," she snapped. "Uniforms, service weapons, police cars, they bring down property values. We're not going to have armed thugs living here." I felt my chest tighten. Emily hadn't even parked her cruiser in the driveway. She left it at the precinct, like always. She'd gone out of her way to be neighborly. And still, Karen found a reason. Emily didn't flinch. She never does. She just said in that steady, quiet voice of hers, "Karen, you're out of line." That's when it happened. The glint of metal. The sound of a trigger pulling. The electric crackle. A yellow streak of wires shot through the air. I froze, my heart slamming against my ribs, the world slowing to molasses. The taser's prongs lodged into Emily's arm. Sparks danced across her body. She staggered back, eyes wide, teeth clenched as her muscles locked tight. The laughter of kids stopped. The smell of steaks burning turned sour. Every sound in the world seemed to vanish except the hiss and snap of raw electricity chewing at my wife's skin. And I swear to you, I saw fire in her eyes. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because before we reached that night, before the taser, before the sparks, there were cracks in the perfect image we built. Cracks Karen widened every chance she got. We'd moved into the neighborhood 2 years earlier. It was supposed to be a fresh start. A perfect little cul-de-sac lined with identical mailboxes and trimmed hedges. On the surface, it looked like a movie set. Families waved politely, dogs barked from behind picket fences, and the HOA newsletter came tucked neatly under our door every first Monday. Emily loved it because it seemed calm compared to the chaos of her job. And I wanted to believe people here would treat us like family. At first, it was fine. We hosted a barbecue, neighbors came, kids splashed in our kiddie pool, someone brought wine, someone else brought pie. For one night, it felt like we belonged. But even then, Karen lingered on the edge of the crowd, scribbling on her clipboard like we were defendants in her courtroom. "Your fence is half an inch taller than regulations," she muttered when she thought I couldn't hear. "That grill is too close to the hedges," she hissed at Emily. And the worst one whispered with a smile that wasn't a smile, "Police bring trouble, mark my words." Emily brushed it off. She always does. She's been called worse on the streets. But me? I started noticing the way people looked at us differently after that, the way whispers followed us, the way silence fell when Emily's badge flashed even for a second. And in the middle of it all, our families. My mother thought moving here was a mistake from day one. "People like that don't want to know you," she warned. My brother said I was too soft, that I let people push us around. And Emily's father, he adored her, but he hated the uniform, said it made her hard, said it stole his little girl away. So when Karen started her campaign against us, it wasn't just her voice I heard. It was theirs, too. Every doubt, every fear, every accusation, they echoed in my head until I couldn't tell if I was angry at Karen, at my family, or at myself for dragging Emily here. Still, we tried, we smiled, we waved. We followed every ridiculous HOA rule. We even repainted our shutters because Karen said the shade of blue we chose was non-compliant. Emily said it was worth it, that fighting every battle wasn't necessary. But I could see it in her eyes. She hated bowing down to anyone. And maybe that's what Karen sensed. Maybe that's why she never stopped. The night of the taser, everything snapped. We had just unloaded groceries. Emily carried the bread, the peaches, the honey. I carried the bags of vegetables. The air was warm, the sky streaked with gold. For once, it felt normal. Then Karen came striding out, clipboard in one hand, something hidden in the other. She didn't yell at first. That almost made it worse. Her voice was calm, too calm. "You don't belong here," she said. "You and your kind never did." Emily set the groceries down. She tilted her head, watching Karen the way a cat watches a snake. "Karen, go home." "No," Karen said, stepping closer. Her sunglasses reflected the fatting sun. "This is my home, my rules, and if the HOA board won't enforce them, then I will." And then with one smooth, horrifying motion, she raised her hand. The black taser gleamed. "Karen, don't," I shouted. But she already had her finger on the trigger. The crackle split the air. The wires snapped forward. The prongs sank into Emily's skin. I'll never forget the sound she made. Not a scream, not a cry. More like a growl, low and furious, like the sound of a storm breaking in her chest. Her knees buckled, groceries tumbling, peaches rolling across the pavement. For a moment the world tilted. My wife, the strongest person I know, was on the ground, electricity tearing through her, while Karen stood there smirking like she'd won. But Karen didn't know. She didn't know the woman she tasered was a captain in the city police. She didn't know Emily had survived worse. She didn't know this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Because when Emily's eyes met mine, I saw it clear as day. This wasn't just an attack. This was a war. And in that moment, as the taser wires still sparked and neighbors gasped in stunned silence, one question burned in my mind. What happens when the person you underestimated decides they're done being quiet? When I close my eyes, I can still see her, Emily lying on the pavement with those electric wires biting into her skin. The smell of peaches crushed underfoot mixed with the acrid tang of burning plastic from the taser. Neighbors gasped, some whispered, but not one of them moved. And as I knelt beside her, my hands trembling, my chest filling with both fear and rage, I couldn't help but think, how did we get here? The truth is, the seeds of that night were planted long before we moved into that neighborhood. They were hidden in family dinners, in whispered comments, in the way people measured Emily not by who she was, but by what she represented. I grew up in a house where favoritism wasn't hidden. My parents adored my brother, Daniel. He was the golden child, charming, athletic, always saying the right thing. He could forget birthdays, crash the car, skip classes, and still my mother's voice would soften. "He's just figuring things out." Me, I was the reliable one, the quiet one, the one they leaned on but never celebrated. If Daniel was the sun, I was the steady lamp in the corner, useful but forgettable. And when I married Emily, a police officer with eyes that could cut steel, it was like I'd finally brought home something they couldn't ignore. Except instead of admiration, there was resentment. At our wedding, I remember my aunt whispering, "She's too strong for him, too much fire." My father chuckled, glass of whiskey in hand. "Let's see how long she lasts in that uniform before the city chews her up." They didn't see the nights she came home exhausted, her muscles aching, her mind carrying the weight of every call. They didn't see her tenderness, how she'd sit on the floor and let my niece braid her hair, or how she'd hum softly while folding laundry. To them, she was Emily, my wife. She was the cop. And my brother, he made sure to pour salt into that wound. At family dinners, he'd grin across the table, saying things like, "So, Captain, when are you going to arrest my little brother for being boring?" Or, "You keep bringing your work home, doesn't it get old living like a soldier all the time?" Everyone laughed. Everyone but me. Emily just smiled that tight smile, swallowing the insult like she always did. It wasn't just Daniel. Even my own mother once pulled me aside in the kitchen, her voice hushed but sharp. "She scares people, don't you see? A woman like that doesn't soften a home, she hardens it." I wanted to scream that they were wrong, that Emily was the reason our house felt like home, that she was the one who left handwritten notes in my lunchbox, the one who remembered every birthday when even I forgot, the one who fixed the leaky sink when I gave up. But their words clung to me like burrs on my skin. So when Karen showed up with her clipboard and her sharp tongue, it was like she had studied my family's script and decided to play the leading role. She knew exactly what buttons to push. The first real clash came 3 months after we moved in. Emily had just gotten promoted to captain, a milestone that should have been celebrated. I invited my family over for dinner. I grilled steaks. Emily baked her famous lemon bars. The house smelled like garlic and butter and fresh bread. But instead of congratulations, Daniel raised his glass and smirked. Well, look at you, moving up the ladder. Just don't forget us little people when you're running the city. Laughter filled the room. My stomach turned. Emily's hand tightened around mine under the table. She said nothing, only smiled politely. Then my mother chimed in. It's just, promotions like that put you in danger, don't they? The more responsibility you have, the bigger the target on your back. Emily's fork clinked against her plate. For a moment, she looked at me like she wanted me to defend her, to say something, anything. But I stayed silent. And Karen? Oh, Karen wasn't even there, but somehow her shadow fell over that night. Because after dinner, as we stepped outside to see my parents off, she was there at the curb, clipboard in hand. Evening, she said sweetly, eyeing the cars parked along the street. You know, overnight guests need permits, wouldn't want to start off on the wrong foot. Emily drew in a sharp breath. My father narrowed his eyes at her uniform, then muttered, See what I mean? That was the moment I realized. Karen wasn't just a neighbor. She was an amplifier. Every doubt my family had, every insecurity I buried, she gave them a megaphone. There were smaller battles after that. The day Emily parked her cruiser in the driveway after pulling a double shift, Karen snapped a photo and sent it to the HOA board with the subject line, Disturbance of Neighborhood Aesthetic. The time Emily wore her uniform to grab the mail because she was late for work, Karen cornered me, hissing, We don't need intimidation tactics around here. Even when Emily was out jogging, sweat soaking through her t-shirt, Karen sneered from her porch. Maybe if you put that much effort into being a better neighbor instead of a cop, people would like you. I wanted to shout back. I wanted to defend her. But deep down, I could hear my mother's voice, Daniel's laughter, my father's skepticism. I began to wonder if maybe Karen was right. And that poisoned me. One night after Karen filed her 5th complaint about us, this time about the color of our mailbox, I snapped. I can't do this anymore, I told Emily, slamming the letter on the counter. Every day it's something new. Maybe we should just sell the house. Move. Emily was washing dishes. She turned, water dripping from her hands, eyes burning into me. So we let her win, we let them win. I rubbed my temples. It's not about winning, Em, it's about peace. I'm tired of being the target. She threw the dish towel on the counter. And what about me? You think I don't feel it? You think I don't hear the whispers? This is my life, my job. I can't take this uniform off, not for them, not for your family, not for Karen. It's who I am. Her voice cracked. For the first time, I saw not just the captain, not the unshakable woman who faced danger daily, but my wife, tired, cornered, hurting. And I realized something ugly. By staying silent, by avoiding confrontation, I wasn't protecting her. I was abandoning her. But the real breaking point came during Thanksgiving. We hosted again against my better judgment. Emily spent all day cooking turkey, stuffing, pies. The house smelled like cinnamon and sage. Candles flickered. Music played softly. Daniel showed up late, reeking of beer. My father criticized the turkey for being too dry. My mother whispered to Emily, You don't have to prove yourself, dear. We know you're busy with work. And then Karen knocked on the door. Clipboard in hand, smile stretched too wide. Happy Thanksgiving, she chirped. Just wanted to remind you that guest parking is only allowed on the south side of the street. I noticed your brother's car. Before I could answer, Daniel staggered past me and laughed in her face. Lady, who even are you? Don't you have a family to annoy? Karen's smile curdled. She looked past him directly at Emily and said, This is what happens when you let people like you in. Standards fall, respect disappears. You should be ashamed. The room went silent. My mother turned pale. My father cleared his throat. And Emily set down the carving knife, her hands steady, her voice calm but cold. Get out, Karen. And for the first time, Karen flinched. But she didn't leave, she never left. She just smiled that cruel smile and said, You'll see, you'll all see. Looking back, that was the moment the fuse was lit. Thanksgiving wasn't just a holiday that year, it was a warning. Karen had drawn her line in the sand, and Emily had stepped over it. So when Karen raised that taser months later, it wasn't sudden. It wasn't random. It was inevitable. Because Karen wasn't just fighting for rules, she was fighting for control. And Emily, she was the one person who would never, ever bow. And that terrified her. What none of us knew then was how far Karen was willing to go to protect her illusion of power. And how much it would cost us all. The morning of the incident felt ordinary. Too ordinary, the kind of day that lulls you into thinking nothing bad could happen. The sun filtered through the blinds, stripping our bedroom wall with gold. The smell of coffee drifted up from the kitchen. Emily was always up first, even on her rare days off. I remember lying there, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that maybe, just maybe, things were getting better. Karen hadn't filed a complaint in 2 weeks. No surprise knocks on the door, no nasty notes taped to the mailbox. The silence almost felt like mercy. But silence can be the cruelest warning. Emily walked in with a mug of coffee, her dark hair pulled into a neat ponytail. She looked calm, but her shoulders carried a stiffness I recognized. "We need to talk," she said, handing me the cup. "About?" I asked, though I already knew. "The HOA meeting tonight." I groaned. "Do we have to go?" She sat on the edge of the bed, her hand brushing my leg. "If we don't show up, Karen wins. She'll spin whatever story she wants, and the board will eat it up. We need to be there, together." I wanted to argue. I wanted to beg her to let it slide. But the determination in her eyes, steel wrapped in kindness, left no room. That evening, the community center buzzed with murmurs. Folding chairs scraped against the linoleum floor. A pot of weak coffee sat on a side table next to a tray of stale cookies. It smelled faintly of bleach, as if they'd tried too hard to scrub the place clean. Karen stood at the front, clipboard in hand, pearls glinting under the fluorescent lights. She smiled at us like a wolf dressed in Sunday best. "Ah, the captain and her husband," she said, her voice dripping with fall sweetness. "So glad you could join us." Emily squeezed my hand. I felt her pulse quicken. The meeting started with routine business. Budget reports, landscaping updates, plans for the neighborhood block party. But everyone knew what they were really there for. Karen made sure of it. She cleared her throat dramatically, eyes scanning the room before landing on us. "I'd like to address a growing concern in our community," she began. "A concern about safety and appearances." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Karen tapped her clipboard. We've had repeated issues with law enforcement presence on our street. Patrol cars, uniforms, weapons. This is a family neighborhood. Children play outside. We can't have that kind of intimidation disrupting our peace. Emily stood, her chair scraping loudly behind her. Her voice cut through the room, calm but edged with steel. "With all due respect, Karen, I don't bring my work home. I park my cruiser at the station. I don't carry a weapon off-duty. I follow every rule, every regulation, every requirement this HOA demands." Karen tilted her head, smiling that smug smile. "And yet people feel unsafe. Perhaps it's not about what you do, but what you represent." There it was, the dagger wrapped in silk. My stomach churned. I looked around the room, hoping, praying, someone would speak up for us. But most eyes avoided ours. A few neighbors nodded faintly at Karen's words, as if afraid to cross her. That's when Emily's voice sharpened. "I represent protection, service, sacrifice. If you or your children ever needed help, you wouldn't hesitate to call people like me. And yet here you are, treating me like the enemy." A hush fell. Even Karen blinked, caught off guard by the fire in Emily's tone. And then Daniel's voice echoed in my head, his drunken smirk, his mocking words. "Doesn't it get old living like a soldier all the time?" I clenched my fists under the table. Karen recovered quickly. "All I'm saying," she said sweetly, "is that this neighborhood deserves to feel comfortable, and if some people can't fit in, maybe they should reconsider if they belong here at all." The words hit like stones. I saw Emily's jaw tighten. I felt the room shift, neighbors whispering again. And in that moment, one question carved itself into my chest, a question that refused to leave me alone. How far would Karen go to make sure Emily never felt at home here? After the meeting, we walked out into the cool night air. The cicadas buzzed in the trees. My chest felt heavy, like a weight pressing down. Emily lit up a small laugh, but it was brittle. "You see the way they looked at me." I wanted to comfort her, but all I managed was, "They're just scared." She stopped walking, turning to face me. Her eyes glistened under the streetlight. "Scared of what? That I'd protect them, That I'd stand up when no one else would, or is it just easier to let Karen tell them what to think? I had no answer, because maybe Emily wasn't just fighting Karen, she was fighting an entire mindset. The days after the meeting grew colder, not in temperature but in atmosphere. Neighbors who once waved now turned away. Conversations stopped when we approached. Kids were pulled inside as Emily jogged past in her workout clothes. And Karen, she escalated. Notes taped to our door, noise complaint, non-compliant mailbox flag, improper hedge trimming, each one signed with her perfect looping signature. Phone calls to the board, suspicious vehicle in the driveway, unprofessional conduct in uniform. She even started showing up near our house at odd hours, packing with her clipboard, pretending to inspect. It was suffocating. One night I woke to find Emily sitting on the porch, her arms wrapped around herself. The air was damp, smelling faintly of rain. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked, stepping out. She shook her head. "I keep thinking about my officers, about the things they face every day, and then I look here at this neighborhood war, and it feels so stupid, but it still hurts." I sat beside her, resting my hand on hers. "You don't have to fight every battle." She looked at me, her eyes fierce. "Maybe not, but I won't let someone like her erase who I am, not here, not in my own home." The final straw before the taser came on a Saturday afternoon. I was mowing the lawn, sweat soaking through my shirt, the sharp smell of cut grass filling the air. Emily was watering the flowers by the porch, humming softly. For a moment it felt normal again. Then Karen appeared, striding across the street, clipboard clutched like a weapon. "You violated Section 8, Article 3, she barked. I killed the mower, wiping my forehead. "What now, Karen?" "Your grass is half an inch too tall, and those flowers non-approved species." Emily laughed, an actual laugh, sharp and incredulous. "Are you serious?" Karen's face reddened. "Do you think this is a joke? These rules exist for a reason. If you can't follow them, maybe you don't belong here." Emily set the hose down, water pooling at her feet. She stepped closer, her voice low but dangerous. "You don't get to decide where we belong. Not you, not your clipboard, not your fake rules. You want to push me? Fine, but you're going to regret it." Karen's eyes widened for just a second before narrowing again. "Is that a threat, Captain?" Emily's lips curled into a tight smile. "It's a promise." And right then, I knew. I knew Karen wouldn't stop until she made her move. And I knew Emily wouldn't back down. What I didn't know was how violent that collision would become, or how close I'd come to losing her. The next morning, the sun rose with a strange stillness. Our neighborhood, once peaceful, felt like a battlefield waiting for its next clash. I barely slept, my mind replaying the image of Karen lunging at Emily with that taser. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the wires sparking, aimed at the woman I loved most in this world. I rolled over, staring at Emily, who was already awake, her eyes open, thoughtful, and calm. That calm scared me more than any yelling or tears would have. It meant she was planning something. "Coffee's ready," she whispered, slipping out of bed. When she returned, mug in hand, I finally spoke the question burning inside me. "What now?" Emily sipped her drink slowly, the silence stretching until I thought she wouldn't answer. Finally, she said, "Now we make sure the HOA never pulls something like this again. They crossed the line. It's time to fight back, officially." I could feel a pit forming in my stomach. Emily wasn't just angry, she was resolute. I followed her into the kitchen, where she spread out papers and her laptop. On the screen was a draft complaint to the police department, outlining everything: Karen's assault, the HOA's coordinated harassment, and the constant threats. Emily was done playing defense. She was moving to offense, and when my wife moved like that, nothing could stop her. But as we prepared our case, the HOA made its next move. Around noon, there was a pounding on our front door, hard, deliberate. I opened it to find two men in suits standing on our porch. Behind them, Karen smirked from the sidewalk, arms crossed like she'd already won. One of the men introduced himself as an HOA legal representative. His voice dripped with arrogance as he handed me a thick packet of papers. "You are being fined $25,000 for multiple violations, including threatening board members, obstruction, and failure to comply with HOA directives." His smug tone made my blood boil. Emily stepped forward, her badge hanging from a chain around her neck. "This is harassment, not a fine," she said flatly. The lawyer barely glanced at her before sneering. "Your badge doesn't mean anything here. This is a civil matter. If you don't pay within 30 days, we'll foreclose on your home." Karen chuckled loudly, making sure the whole street heard. Neighbors peeked from their windows, watching this circus unfold. Something inside me snapped. You think you can take our home because Karen says so? You don't know who you're messing with. My voice shook with rage, but Emily placed a calming hand on my arm. She wasn't shaken. She leaned forward close enough that the lawyer blinked nervously. You just threatened a police captain in her own home. That's called intimidation, and I assure you the law will care. Her words landed like a hammer. The men shifted uncomfortably, but Karen just laughed louder, yelling, Your little badge won't save you when the HOA owns your house. After they left, Emily and I sat in silence. The stakes had just risen. This wasn't just harassment anymore, it was war. They wanted to bankrupt us, crush us, make an example out of us. I could feel fear creeping in, but Emily's eyes burned with determination. She wasn't just protecting our home anymore. She was protecting our dignity, our future, and sending a message to every bully who thought power gave them the right to destroy others. That night, as rain pattered against the windows, Emily made a call. I only caught snippets of the conversation, but I heard words like evidence, assault, and civil rights violation. When she hung up, she turned to me. Internal Affairs and the district attorney, we're going to bury them under the weight of their own arrogance. My chest tightened with both pride and worry. Karen had no idea what storm she had unleashed. But then, just when I thought things couldn't escalate further, there was a loud crash outside. Emily grabbed her sidearm and we ran to the window. My jaw dropped. Someone had spray-painted across our garage door in huge red letters, "Get out or else." The paint dripped like blood glowing under the streetlight. And standing across the street, umbrella in hand, was Karen, smiling as if daring us to act. Emily's grip tightened on her weapon, her jaw set like stone. For the first time, I truly feared what my wife might do next. The red spray paint glared at us like a wound. Get out or else. It wasn't just vandalism, it was a declaration of war. I could see Emily's reflection in the garage window, her eyes burning hotter than the neon letters dripping in the rain. She didn't say a word, but the silence itself screamed louder than any curse. I tried to calm her. Maybe it's not worth it, maybe we should just... But the words died in my throat when she turned to me. If we leave, they win, and I don't let bullies win. Her voice was sharp, steady, the same voice she used when commanding officers in dangerous standoffs. Only this time, the battlefield was our own street. The next morning, Emily went into full captain mode. She gathered every shred of evidence, photos of the spray paint, recordings of Karen's threats, the Taser incident, even affidavits from sympathetic neighbors who were tired of Karen's reign of terror but too scared to speak out until now. I helped organize the files, my hands shaking as I stapled paper after paper. I wasn't built for this kind of fight, but Emily, she thrived on it. She was like a general preparing for war. We drove to the precinct. Heads turned as Emily marched through the doors, not just as an officer, but as a victim demanding justice. She presented everything to Internal Affairs, her voice calm but charged with unshakable authority. The HOA attempted to intimidate a police officer and her family. They used violence, threats, and financial extortion. This isn't just harassment, it's organized abuse of power. The room went quiet. Even the seasoned detectives looked shaken. But while Emily worked on the legal side, I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen wouldn't just sit back and wait. And I was right. That night, as I stepped outside to lock the gate, I saw a car idling across the street. Its headlights were off, engine low, but I could feel eyes watching. My chest tightened. When the car finally sped off, I caught the license plate. It wasn't a random stalker. It was one of the HOA board members. I told Emily, and she didn't even blink. They're rattled. They're desperate. That means we're winning. Her confidence scared me as much as it comforted me. Winning didn't feel like victory yet. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to see if the ground would give way. The very next day, Karen escalated again. She showed up at our driveway with 2 security guards, hired muscle. She screamed that we were trespassing on community property, demanding we vacate our own home. Her voice carried down the block as neighbors peeked through blinds. I wanted to shout back, but Emily stepped forward first. She unholstered her badge, holding it high. You've crossed into criminal territory. Harassment, vandalism, attempted assault. You're done, Karen. Karen laughed in her face. You think flashing that badge scares me? The HOA owns this neighborhood, not you, not the cops, me. Her voice cracked on that last word, but the arrogance didn't fade. It was as if she believed she was untouchable. But then Emily said something that wiped the smirk off Karen's face. I've already filed with the district attorney's office. Your threats, your fines, your taser, it's all in a report sitting on their desk right now. You're not just facing HOA meetings anymore, Karen. You're facing felony charges. For the first time, I saw fear flicker across Karen's eyes, just for a second. But then she doubled down, screaming louder, drawing the whole street's attention. "You'll regret this. I swear on my life, you'll regret ever messing with me." The guards pulled her back and the scene ended, but the damage was done. Everyone had seen it. Karen had lost control. She wasn't a queen anymore, she was a cornered animal. That night I tried to convince Emily to let things cool down, but she shook her head. "It's too late. Karen crossed the line when she pulled that taser. Now I finish this." Her voice carried no hesitation. And just as I thought the storm might finally break, the phone rang. Emily answered and her face went pale. It was one of her contacts at the DA's office. Our case was moving forward, but someone had broken into the evidence locker. The files, the photos, even the taser cartridge, all gone. Someone on the inside was helping Karen. Emily's hand trembled as she set down the phone. "They think they can bury this. They think I'll back off, but they have no idea who they're dealing with." Her voice was steel. Mine was fear. Because if Karen had allies inside the system, then we weren't just fighting a neighborhood battle anymore. We were standing against something much bigger. And the worst part? Karen knew it. Because the next morning, taped to our front door, was a note written in thick black marker. "Stop or you won't live to regret it." The note on the door still haunts me. Thick black letters, shaky but venomous. "Stop or you won't live to regret it." I held it in my hands, the paper damp from the morning dew, my palms sweating through the ink. Emily studied it like evidence at a crime scene, her jaw clenched, her silence heavier than any threat. "They're desperate," she finally said, "and desperate people make mistakes." I wanted to believe her, but my stomach churned, because this wasn't just an HOA president gone rogue anymore. This was personal. Karen had allies, and one of them had already tampered with police evidence. That wasn't desperation, it was strategy. Emily refused to let it break her. She made her move the only way she knew how, by going public. That afternoon, she called a press contact she trusted, an old friend from her academy days who now worked investigative journalism. Within 48 hours, our story hit local news. A respected police captain's family targeted, harassed, assaulted by their own HOA. The taser incident, the vandalism, the threats, everything was laid bare. The reaction was explosive. Neighbors who had stayed silent finally stepped forward. Anonymous tips flooded Emily's inbox, revealing Karen's history of extortion and favoritism. One neighbor admitted Karen waived dues for her friends while slapping others with bogus fines. Another confessed Karen once forced a widower to sell his house at a loss after harassing him over weed growth. It wasn't just us. Karen had built an empire of fear. But going public had consequences. The night the story aired, we heard it again, the low growl of an idling car outside. I pulled back the curtain just enough to see the silhouette of Karen herself, standing by her car, arms folded, her face illuminated by the glow of her phone. She wasn't yelling this time. She wasn't even moving. She was just watching. Emily called the station, reporting the harassment formally. But the patrol car never showed. Hours later, she found out why. Someone in dispatch had rerouted the call. Someone was still pulling strings from the inside. I could feel Emily breaking in quiet moments, even if she tried to hide it. The long pauses when she thought I wasn't looking, the way her hand lingered on her badge like it might vanish if she let go. "They're supposed to be our people," she whispered one night. "The uniform's supposed to mean something." That's when an unexpected ally stepped in, Emily's father, a retired police lieutenant. He'd kept his distance during our battles, saying he didn't want to interfere. But after seeing the news, he showed up at our door. He hugged his daughter with a kind of grip that carried both pride and sorrow. "Emily," he said, his voice gravelly but firm, "you taught me to believe in the system again, and I can't sit here watching that system chew you up." He placed a folder on our dining table. Inside was information only someone like him could get: records, property, deeds, even bank statements. Karen hadn't just been abusing HOA power, she'd been siphoning funds into a private account. But here came the moral dilemma. If Emily used her father's files, it could be seen as a conflict of interest, even misconduct. The very thing Karen might use against her in court. Truth versus loyalty, duty versus family. I could see the war inside Emily's eyes. That night we argued for hours. I begged her to use the evidence to finally put Karen away. "If you don't," I said, "she wins, she gets to keep hurting people." Emily shook her head. "And if I do, I risk my badge, my career, everything I've built." She buried her face in her hands. "I swore to play by the rules. If I break them, even for justice, then I'm no better than her." I had no answer, only silence. But the silence didn't last, because Karen made her boldest move yet. The next evening, as we returned from grocery shopping, we found our front door wide open. My heart stopped. The smell hit me first, bleach sharp and suffocating, furniture overturned, drawers ransacked. And then Emily gasped. On the living room wall, written in bleach-streaked letters, were the words, "The badge won't save you." I could feel the burn in my throat from the chemical stench, my eyes watering. But Emily's eyes, they weren't watering. They were blazing. She pulled out her phone, dialed her father. "Dad, it's time. We're not holding back anymore." He didn't hesitate. "Good, I've been waiting for you to say that." The next 48 hours blurred into strategy meetings. Emily, her father, a few officers she trusted beyond doubt. They pieced together Karen's financial trail, linked it to HOA abuses, tied it all to the threats and harassment. But still, the conflict inside Emily simmered. Was she protecting the law or bending it? That's when the confession came. Her younger brother, David, quiet, reserved, always on the sidelines, showed up at our house. He looked pale, restless, guilt carved into his face. "Emily, I need to tell you something." She frowned. "What is it?" He swallowed hard. "Karen's been paying me for months to keep quiet, to feed her little things about you. I didn't know she'd go this far, I swear. I needed the money." The air in the room froze. My skin prickled. Emily stared at her brother like she didn't recognize him. You betrayed me." Her voice cracked, not with anger, but with heartbreak. David's eyes filled with tears. "I thought it was just petty HOA drama. I didn't think she'd actually hurt you. Please, Em, forgive me. Let me help fix this." The betrayal cut deeper than any taser could. Her own blood had fueled Karen's campaign against her. And yet Emily didn't scream. She didn't lash out. She just closed her eyes, breathing like she was holding herself together by threads. Finally, she whispered, "Then you're going to testify. You're going to tell the truth. No more secrets, no more loyalty to the wrong side." David nodded, tears streaming. "I will." I thought the confession might finally shift everything in our favor. But the universe had one last twist waiting. The next morning, before David could give his statement, we woke to a siren and flashing lights outside our house. Officers surrounded the lawn, guns drawn. A voice boomed through a megaphone. "EMILYROSS, you're under arrest for evidence tampering and abuse of power." My blood ran cold. Karen had made her move. She hadn't just taken our peace, our safety, our home. Now she was coming for Emily's badge. Emily, betrayed by her brother, now faces arrest under false charges as Karen pulls the strings tighter. The sound of the megaphone still echoes in my skull. "EMILYROSS, you're under arrest." My wife stood frozen on the porch, her badge heavy on her hip, her hands trembling, but not from fear, from rage, from betrayal. The flashing red and blue lights painted her uniform in jagged strokes of shame she didn't deserve. I rushed forward, shouting, "She's innocent, you're making a mistake." But the officers ignored me. They weren't here to listen. They were here to make a scene, to parade Emily in front of our neighbors like she was the villain, and I knew exactly whose fingerprints were all over this circus, Karen's. Emily raised her hands slowly, her voice carrying over the chaos. "You know me, you know my record. Look me in the eye and tell me you believe this." Some of the younger officers faltered. One even lowered his gaze, but the sergeant in charge barked the order, "Cuff her." That was the moment I felt something inside me snap. This wasn't just about HOA fines or property disputes anymore. This was about a woman who believed she owned the world and the system bending under her poison, and I couldn't let it stand. Emily's father, who had been watching from the driveway, stepped forward with a thunder I'd never seen in him before. "You lay a hand on my daughter without due process, and I'll have your badges on the chief's desk by morning." His voice shook the air like a gunshot. The sergeant hesitated, but the damage was done. Emily was taken into custody. Watching her disappear into the back of that cruiser broke something inside me. The hours that followed were a blur of phone calls, lawyers, desperate bargaining. David, Emily's brother, sat in our living room, pale and shaking, whispering over and over, "This is my fault." Finally, Emily's father slammed his fist on the table. "Then make it right, son. Confess. Tell the DA what you told us." And he did. The very next morning, David gave a sworn statement exposing Karen's bribes, the payoffs, the manipulation. The DA's office had no choice but to listen, especially with the mountain of financial records Emily's father had collected. Slowly, painfully, the tide turned. 2 days later, Emily walked free. I'll never forget the moment she stepped out of the courthouse, the weight of the false charges still heavy on her, but her spine straight, her eyes fierce. Reporters swarmed her with questions, cameras flashing. She didn't give them sound bites or smiles. She just said one sentence, her voice steady as stone. "No one is above the law, not even an HOA president." It was the beginning of the end for Karen. Investigators raided her house, uncovering fraudulent accounts, kickbacks, and falsified HOA records. Neighbors who once feared her came forward, emboldened by Emily's stand. Within weeks, Karen was arrested, not for harassment, not even for the Taser attack, but for something far uglier: embezzlement and corruption. Justice came, but it didn't feel clean, because scars remained. Our walls still carried the bleach stains where Karen scrawled her threats. Emily's trust in the system she'd dedicated her life to was fractured, and David, her brother, would carry the weight of his betrayal for years. We started therapy together, all of us. Not the kind where you sit in a circle and pretend words fix everything, but the kind where you learn to breathe again, to unclench your fists, to sleep without checking the locks 3 times. Emily admitted she felt guilt, not for fighting, but for letting Karen live in her head for so long. I admitted my fear, that every time she walked out the door in uniform, she might not come back. The neighborhood changed too. Without Karen, the HOA crumbled, rebuilt under new leadership. Neighbors actually smiled at one another. Kids played on lawns without fear of fines. For the first time in years, the street felt alive again. But the truth, we never really went back to before. Emily still bears the scar, not physical, but emotional. That scar is a reminder: trust can be broken, even by family, and power unchecked can destroy lives. Yet it's also proof that standing firm, even when the ground shakes beneath you, matters. Sometimes, late at night, Emily takes off her badge and sets it on the nightstand. She stares at it, quiet, and whispers, "Am I still doing the right thing?" And every time I take her hand and answer, "Yes, because you never stopped fighting for what's right, even when it cost you everything." Karen thought a taser, a smear campaign, even the law itself could break my wife. But she didn't know who she was up against. She wasn't just a neighbor. She wasn't just a wife. She was a police captain, and she refused to kneel to fear. And that's the scar we live with, not one of defeat, but of survival. So let me ask you, what would you have done if someone like Karen tried to tear your family apart? Would you fight back, even if it cost you everything? Let me know in the comments. And if you believe in standing up to bullies, no matter how powerful they think they are, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because this story, this scar, isn't just ours. It belongs to everyone who's ever had to fight for their peace.